Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show
on 5 Live.
Hello, welcome to Tuffers and Vaughan. It is actually not Michael Vaughan tonight. It is Sir Alistair Cook, as we say, in for Michael Vaughan tonight. Alistair, which is not to imply in any way that you're a poor substitute. No, you're an excellent substitute for Michael Vaughan. How are you both?
Very well, thank you, Ellie.
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, in good form after yesterday, watching the boys beat Germany 2-0. So, excellent. I woke up with a big smile on my face.
I thought you were going to say, in good form after watching the boys beat Sri Lanka by 5 wickets yesterday in Durham.
Well, didn't they play well? Fantastic. Great to see Joe Root back in action and scoring runs in his sort of special way. Looked $1 million, and England just seem to be going from strength to strength, don't they? They seem to have all the bases covered, with people waiting in the wings as well. Massive strength in depth. You've still got some of the big guns to come back into that side as well. And, well, they were just too strong for Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka looked like a side that was in sort of transition a little bit. They've got a decent bowling attack, but they just can't seem to put a score on the board. So work to do for them. But England go from strength to strength and look still a very, very strong white ball side indeed.
It's amazing that the difference between them and the Test boys. You take a couple of people out of that Test side and it looked really unbalanced in terms of, you took Ben Stokes and the all-rounders out, and suddenly you don't want to play 4 bowlers because it makes the batting light. The one-day team, David Malan, missed that game at last minute. Suddenly Liam Livingston's opened the batting or whatever. Everything seems covered with almost 2 or 3 people to come in. So they look, as tough as I just said, a fantastic shape. We do have to be a little bit say that this Sri Lanka side isn't a great Sri Lanka side, but even with playing Sri Lanka, it doesn't matter who they play against. They're I think a brilliant unit with so many options to be able to change depending on conditions as well.
And actually, you talked, Tuffers, about the boys did well last night, beating Germany, and actually that was kind of a bit of a theme throughout the whole day at Durham, because we were thinking, right, okay, our game kicks off at 5 o'clock. Johnny Bairstow came out as if he wanted to get it done in 10 overs and get in there and watch the game. And then actually there was a point where just towards the end of the England run chase, the football had started. Maybe 1 or 2 people started to sneak away, and there was some talk as well that members of the England team were not watching what was happening in the cricket, that they trusted Joe Root and Sam Curran to get them home, and they were watching the footy instead. Did this ever happen to you, Alistair, in your playing career, that you realised that people weren't watching you, they'd gone and switched on the World Cup or whatever instead?
Absolutely. I dread to think how few balls James Anderson watched me bat throughout my career. I reckon there'd been he said it was superstition, but I think he just didn't like. There was times where he just used to go to sleep. Fair enough. Like the amount of overs he would have bowled, just sit in the physio's room doing this crossword, very little attention to what I was up to. But if he was happy, then I was happy. Nothing worse than a grumpy Jimmy Anderson, is there?
No, I sometimes wondered where my teammates were on the boundary when I was batting, and usually they'd rather watch Bargain Hunt or something like that, let alone the Euros or the World Cup. But no, it's happened to me a few times as well.
You'd have said, Tuffers, that when you went out to bat, weren't they putting their whites on?
Well, there you go. So they had sort of one eye on what was going on. But it's happened a few times. It has happened a few times. Listen, you just got to get on with it, and you know what the boys are all about and what have you. But I was very impressed with the way Joe Root just knocked those runs off. Cool, calm head, wasn't it? And just went about his business. I think he only scored 4 fours, didn't he, or something like that was the stat. Yeah. Just in his own inimitable style, knocked it around, 1s and 2s, put away the odd bad ball, and just saw us across the line.
But that is the way that Joe Root bats, isn't it? And we're going to hear from him in just a second, because I had a bit of a catch-up with him a little bit earlier on. But you contrast the way, as I said, the Johnny Bairstow set off. He hit 11 off his first 3 balls. Absolute, hitting it to all parts, and then got out. And you compare and contrast with the way that Joe Root goes about his business. Alistair, I suppose that's what you need in a one-day team, isn't it? To have that mixture of styles.
Absolutely, but I think Owen Morgan just wants one rock, doesn't he? He just wants one guy who plays that kind of very low risk cricket to kind of guarantee a bit of consistency and everyone bat round him. The one thing which makes Joe Root very special at that, his strike rate is always up near 90. On a good day, it's over. It's close to 100, and clearly, if he gets in, it will, go to big 100. He will strike over 100. But that's what makes him such a special one-day player, is that his low-risk shots and his ability to score all around the ground at that low risk, but still striking at that 90 runs to 100 runs a ball. I think that's just unbelievable from him, really. And yeah, you talk about low risk cricket, or that banker. He's that banker, isn't he? If there is a 250, 260 run chase, he is the type of person that he's the only that person you could kind of guarantee he will get that 80 of 80 balls. Johnny Bairstow might finish the game in 23 overs, like he might. On the way yesterday, he'd been done and dusted by 4 o'clock. But for that real guarantee, it's a Joe Root. Well, we had it with Johnny, with Jonathan Trott. He was kind of the banker, averaging 50. But I'm not putting it down on Jonathan Trott. He striked at 75 to 80. So that kind of shows Joe Root's extra class, that he can still play low risk cricket but strike close to 100.
But also, Cookie, he can go through the gears as well, can he? I mean that's what he sets his stall out to do. But he also then can be more expensive, can't he?
Absolutely, Tuffers. He can go through gears, and he might be even in that T20 squad for Owen Morgan. When now it's changed maybe to UAE and Oman, is it where there might be lower scores. 160 might be a good score, but he has the ability. He does have the ability to play all the shots. He's not that absolute firecracker like Johnny Bairstow or Jason Roy, who can single-handedly win a game on his own. But I'll tell you what he can do. He can win a tournament for you with that consistency and just his world-class nature of his batting.
Yeah. Well, it was Joe Root's 150th ODI cap yesterday. Let's hear from him. He told me how proud he was to reach that landmark.
It's been a really enjoyable journey till now. A lot of very good memories, and hopefully many more to come. Chris actually said some really nice words, and meant a huge amount for him to go out his way to do that, and really set the day up nicely. And thankfully, we put in a really strong performance and started the series off really well.
He said he actually lost some sleep about what he was going to say. So what did he say to you?
I mean, he was very complimentary, said some very nice things, which, it's always really nice to hear that from your peers and guys that you have a huge amount of respect for on and off the field. And, it's things like that. They're the things that you really do remember, is not necessarily all the runs that you get, but the respect and that you try and earn from your teammates and peers around you. So really grateful of what he had to say, and it was a nice way to start the series. Didn't
he say something about you being like the glue of the team, or something like that? But I think you could almost say the same about him in a way, couldn't you? And the performance that he put in as well yesterday was another indication of that. Yeah, his performance was exceptional. It's not very often you see 5 maidens in a one-day game across 2 teams, never mind in one bowler's 10 over, allocated 10 over. So it was a tremendous effort from him, and it's something that he's done time and time again for England, especially across the formats, but over the last few years in particular in 50 over cricket, he's been a huge asset and someone that's been heavily relied on and really consistent. So to see him continue that and to keep looking better and better game on game is a really good sign for England cricket. Do you think he's underappreciated sometimes, that people kind of forget about him when they talk about England's great performers and great all-rounders as well? Certainly not from the guys within the dressing room and in and around the squad. Everyone knows how important he is to our success, and what a wonderful player he is. And the amount of games that he's won across his I think he's played 105, 106 games himself. So he's hugely experienced, and he's done a number of brilliant things in an England shirt, and there's definitely many more to come as well. Talking about the 50 over format, Joe, obviously England are world champions in that format, and we've got another 2 ODIs against Sri Lanka coming up, and then 3 against Pakistan. But it just feels at the moment that nobody really seems to know what the 50 over format is for, and it's because there's a lot of really short form, 100 ball and T20 coming up, and the T20 World Cup coming up after that as well. But virtually none of your teammates are going to be playing domestic 50 over cricket. Where do you think 50 over cricket stands at the moment? I think that when you're playing for England, regardless of the format, it means a huge amount. One thing that 50 over cricket is, there's going to be a World Cup in a few years' time.
And it's really important that you continue to keep putting in strong performances. And every time you get that squad together, you want to be consistent. We want to be the number one side in the world, across the board, across all three formats. But it's something that we worked extremely hard at for 4 or 5 year period leading into the last World Cup. And it's something we certainly don't want to neglect. And as a group and as a team, I certainly don't think that is the case. Of course, with the schedule as it is, the amount of cricket that we play in particular as an international side, there are huge amounts of, there's so many games that there has had to be compromises, especially in COVID times. But that's part and parcel of how things are at the minute. We have to accept that. We've now got 5 more games where we can hopefully repeat what was a very strong performance in the first ODI and show that we are still very much leading the way in this format.
When it comes to the innings that steered England home yesterday, Jimmy Anderson on commentary on TMS was saying that when he watches you bat in a 50 over game, it's almost like all of a sudden he looks down, he looks up again, and you've got 35 on the board at about a run a ball, and he doesn't really know where you've got them from, and you can kind of contrast the way that Johnny Bairstow goes out and blasts everything around the place, and then there's you kind of nudging, nurdling, and getting the odd boundary when it comes along. How do you approach that, short form batting?
I think you just try and play the situation that's in front of you as much as you can. I think when you're chasing in particular, the scripts are written there for you, and you just try and follow the script as best you can. The numbers are there, you know roughly what you need an over. And the beauty of the way that Johnny plays, Jason plays, those guys that are very aggressive at the top of the order, it makes my life a lot easier. And I think actually the way I play, trying to get them back on strike, makes their life a lot easier as well. They complement each other pretty well. And I suppose I think that's been a reason why we've had continued success and we've managed to have big scores, is because we have a very good understanding as a batting group of how we all play and how we want to construct an innings as a team. So I suppose I'm experienced now, and I've found myself in a number of situations over the years, and I can sort of recall those when I find myself under pressure on occasions. And yesterday, knew that we had so much time to play with. It was just always going to be one big partnership. After that brilliant start, Johnny really put us in a strong position there on what wasn't a straightforward wicket. So it was just about getting one good partnership together, and we could really drive the game home from there. And take the sting out of it. And I think we did have a little wobble, but we managed to overcome that. And we're quite clinical after that period.
Would you like to be part of the consideration for the T20 World Cup?
I think there's a lot of players out there that would all want to be a part of that squad. It's a brilliant team. It's a brilliant squad of players that that are consistently playing really well. And of course, I want to try and I want to play as many games for England as possible across all 3 formats. But I mentioned this earlier. I think that as a batsman, your currency is runs, and what you've got to try and do is, regardless of the format, the situation you find yourself in, you just got to try and score as many runs as you can. And that's certainly all I'll be trying to do. And almost add to that, try and add to the strength and depth of what is a very fine squad of players that are playing some really good cricket. And
I wonder, when it comes to the end of the year, we know it's a packed schedule. We know particularly the end of the year is going to be crazy with the T20 World Cup and then the Ashes following on, not long after that. Is there a conversation that you're having at the moment between yourself, Owen Morgan, Chris Silverwood, about prioritising different players for different formats? Because you look at Ben Stokes, Jos Buttler, Jofra Archer, Mark Wood, who I'm sure that you as Test captain and Owen as white ball captain would equally want to have as part of the team.
Look, it's we all want to have as many of the guys that are consistently in all 3 teams, or would feature in what you'd argue the best 11 or best 16 squads. You want them playing and available for as much as possible. As you mentioned, the schedule that we've got as an England team is a lot more demanding than a lot of other teams around the world, and we've tried to manage that as best as we can. We've tried to also have to deal with the pandemic as well, and make sure that the restrictions and different issues that's thrown at has made things, probably compounded things a little bit, made it very difficult to deal with a very difficult schedule. But as captains, you want your best players playing as much as you can. It's not always that easy and that straightforward. Certainly, when it comes around to those big games, those guys you want to be in and around and making sure that that they're fit and ready to go and in a really good place to play. So, hopefully that can be the case for both.
Well, that was Joe Root talking to me a bit earlier on. Can I start, Alistair, by just asking you about how you resolve this issue of the players who would want to play in the T20 World Cup and would want to play in the Ashes? Can they all do both?
I think they can for that bit. I generally think for those two massive tournaments, I think it is one of those you think, well, for 5 months of our lives, we've got the opportunity to do something very special. And I think as elite performers, you just want the opportunity to play in the biggest tournaments. So you sacrifice a lot when you do it. And unfortunately, the biggest part of that, you sacrifice a lot of the family time. I think for these 5 months, for the Ashes away and a World T20 away, to become the first side to hold the 50-over tournament World Cup and the T20, they've got a great chance of that. And then to play in the Ashes abroad away is one of those great life experiences. I think they've got a chance as well. So, yes, I think it is possible.
So
have you had to give out one of those caps? Did you lose any sleep?
What?
Or make the speech?
I actually gave Jason Roy his test cap at Lord's. I think on probably one of my first times I was on TMS, and I did. I was just as nervous then. I was thinking, I'm going to really enjoy this Ireland test match. The first time turn up at Lord's, you see, as a player, you see all the media guys. They think, I can't wait to be up there without the pressure and all of it. And at the morning of the game, up there I was, shaking what I was going to say to Jason Roy. But yeah, it's a great experience handing out the cap. But yes, it was quite nerve-wracking. So yeah, it did kind of ruin my first day in the TMS box.
Oh well, we hopefully we made you feel more at home a little bit after that.
Yeah, once that was over.
Yeah, happy days.
Yeah, so we heard Joe Root saying really nice things about Chris Woakes, and Chris Woakes obviously said very nice things about Joe Root as well. Do you think Chris Woakes is a very underrated player, Tuffers, by other people? I mean, Joe says not among the squad.
No, well, without a doubt, not amongst the squad. He's one of those guys who just slips in sort of like a little bit under the radar, but just keeps performing and performing and performing. Anything that is put in front of him, he does to the best of his ability, whether that be bat, bowl or field. One of those great team guys. I certainly don't, but I know what you mean. There are some of these sort of guys who don't get the adulation of the Andersons and the Broads or of the Bairstows in the one-day stuff and what have you. So I do understand that a little bit, but I think anyone who knows anything about cricket realise what an asset he is to the England setup. And I just he must be sitting there thinking, well, if Broad and Anderson weren't about, I would have had so many more wickets. You know what I mean? He has sort of come in at a bit of an awkward time with those two guys sort of locked into the test match arena. But one of the guys that would be first on my team sheet for sure. Great all-round cricketer, great fella to have in the dressing room. Yeah, and just always seems to come up trumps. Learned a lot from the IPL and his time over there, I think, as well, and has brought that back. And he's also now seen, I think, as a bit of a go-to guy for the youngsters as well, coming through, a bit like the Sam Currans and what have you. I think he's sort of like one of those sort of like, old heads now in the side. Great fella to have around.
Well, to me, he's a captain's dream. He's just that, like, his character is exactly the same, whether he's scoring runs or not scoring runs, not taking wickets or taking wickets. You know what Chris Waite's going to turn up every single day at training, every single day at the game. The thing I have about him is, since James Anderson and Stuart Broad hasn't played one-day cricket, his numbers have gone through the roof. Yeah. He is, I think before his economy, I think he played 30-odd games, 35 economy rate just under 6. That's just before that's up and including the 2015 World Cup. So that's when Stuart Broad, James Anderson were there kind of leading the attack, and he was always the third seamer. Those two guys stopped after 2015 World Cup, or thereabouts. And since then, he averages 27 with the ball. His economy rate's come down to just over 5, and he's taken 106 wickets. So without kind of being in their shadow, he's had to take on the responsibility, which obviously thrived on. He's obviously bowled at better times in terms of the new, probably bowled the new ball. He has bowled the new ball majority of those times since 2015, and been better for it. And this is not nothing against James Anderson and Stuart Broad, but I reckon that you'd see the same development in the Test side as well. I reckon when those two stop playing and he stopped getting compared to them, it's then time for someone else to step up. He is the guy I reckon is going to fly for those 2 or 3 years. He's a bit old. He's not going to play 150 Test matches because he's I think he's 30 odd now. But you'll get 2 or 3 years, I reckon, when those two stop playing Test cricket, of the best Chris Woakes, because he's got all the skills. He's a fantastic bowler, and he'll get to bowl at the best times. And that's at the moment he's always had to bowl when James Anderson and Stuart Broad, they've had the new ball, or when it's cloudy and the floodlights are on, they get the first go at it. And I think now, when those two finish, I reckon Joe Root will be calling upon him, and I reckon he will fly as well in Test cricket, like he has done in one-day cricket.
Well, and you look at the one-day figures as well, Tuffers, and you look at the figures for the T20 down in Southampton the other day. He took 1 for 9 off his 5 overs in the T20, and then yesterday in Durham, his figures were 10 overs, 5 maidens.
5 maidens, I know.
4 wickets for 18 runs. I mean, that's averaging 1.8 according to my maths. That's amazing, isn't it? In the context of, I mean, against Sri Lanka, obviously, so not the strongest opposition in the world, but as Cookie says, across the whole board, those economy rates, and also he's hardly played as well because he missed out on such a chunk of time, so he's really had very little cricket.
Yeah, I think he probably feels like he's got a little bit of catching up to do, and those figures were just phenomenal. I think he's almost getting better and better and better. I think that he's sort of pooled all of that experience now. He's always managed to keep himself pretty fit as well, so he's a fit and a strong guy, and he's just developed into a fabulous all-round bowler. When the conditions are in his favour, he can go hunting the wicket. So if it's swinging or seaming, he has those abilities as well. If it's flat, he can lock into a length and contain with great accuracy. He's got a nice slippery bouncer and bowls beautifully at the death as well. So he's kind of got all those bases covered. As Cookie said, he must be an absolute captain's dream.
According to James Anderson, when I was talking to him about it last night, he has got the best hair in the squad.
Yes, lovely eyes as well.
I don't know if you saw there was somebody put a meme up on social media saying that Jack Grealish's hair with the Alice band, he learnt from Chris Woakes' hair last year when nobody could get haircuts, and he had the Alice band as well. So that was quite a good comparison. Being a Villa fan as well. Yeah,
there are a couple of Brummie legends, them too.
They really are. So apart from the good hair and everything else, Chris Woakes, he could play every game. Would you just pick him in every team you were captaining, Alistair?
Well, certainly in the one-day cricket, certainly 50 overs, he's a nailed on. An absolute nailed on. You go to Test matches, it's just down to the balance of the side. I think you'd need some variety in there. So. No, he's not the first name in my sheet, but he's definitely on that plane for me. If he's fit, he's definitely, he'll play some of the cricket in that Test matches. There's no doubt about it. And his batting's underrated. That 100 he got at Lords, that Test 100 in tough conditions when England really needed the runs. He can play. And as I said, I think when he gets that run as a new ball bowler for England in Test cricket in a year or so's time, I reckon I think he'll be absolutely outstanding.
Can I ask you about Owen Morgan's batting at the moment? And actually, I asked him the question himself as well, and he said he's not happy with his scoring at the moment. He's played 3 matches so far. He's averaging 6. So, amazing captain, but is his batting a concern?
He's not in the best touch of his life, I think. He hasn't played a huge amount of cricket over the last little bit of time. It's a concern, in fact, just for him personally at this precise moment in time. As a captain, you always want to score runs. Am I concerned about Owen Morgan's batting? No, absolutely not. Since the World Cup, he's averaging mid-40s. Not since the World Cup. Sorry, he's averaging mid-40s over his last period of time as taking over as captain. He's got a good strike rate. Look, he's just going through one of those little dips. You can't score runs all the time. And he's just there. Am I worried? No. Of course he will be worried because as a performer, you just want to score runs all the time. You want to always be the guy that is into. He's just not in that. He's just not in that little bit. Last year he was. He's just having a little bit there. You keep you on your toes. You keep working hard. Owen Morgan will find one of those innings where he just gets going, gets a bit of time in the middle, and it'll all come back to him. So no, I'm not concerned at all.
I think also, Cookie, I kind of always get the feeling that Owen Morgan likes to see a challenge, if you know what I mean, and likes to sort of, I don't know, be up against the wall, or a big match player. I know that sounds a bit of a cliche, a big match player, but do you see that about sort of Owen nowadays as he's getting a little bit older?
Yeah, absolutely, Tuffers. I think you're right. I mean, not the game was won yesterday when he went out to bat, but it wasn't imperative he scored a run. Given say that situation was against Australia at 2-2 in a 5-match series, you're kind of, that's when you expect him to turn up. He's kind of a bit like, I suppose, KP in one sense, that if we were 200 for 2 on a real flat one, he was less likely to score runs than when it really mattered, and that's part of their kind of maverick character. And I'm not concerned about Owen Morgan's batting at all, or his part on that one-day team. The
question that I asked Joe, Tuffers, I don't know what you think about the question of 50 over cricket and where it is at the moment, because so the T20 Blast is going on at the moment. We've then got the Royal London Cup, which is going to happen at the same time as the 100. And the players who would normally be playing in the Royal London Cup will probably be playing in the 100. So it's going to be almost like a second team affair. And, England are world champions in this format. And I mean, the next World Cup isn't until 2023. But even so, what do you think our approach is to 50 over cricket at the moment?
Well, as Joe said there, you've got to keep your eye in. You can't take your eye off the ball. You can't let all that sort of good work from the World Cup, last time we won it, to sort of slip away, and you lose focus, so to speak. I think with the scheduling nowadays, things will become more, predominant in people's mind. Of course they will. But I just see it as a great opportunity, especially for the county guys now, who have got the opportunity to come in when some of these fellas are away playing the 100 and what have you, to go in there and really get their careers off and running, and sort of like stick their hands up and make a bit of a claim for themselves. But I think that I think it will just inevitably take a slightly bit more of a back seat at the moment, and then it's just up to the backroom staff and the schedulers and what have you to just reinvigorate it and get it all going again.
Yeah, what do you think, Alistair, about the 50 over competition? Because it just feels a bit of an unloved format at the moment in English cricket.
Well, it is unloved this year, with the scheduling with 100 on at the same time. I assume that the hierarchy of the ECB won't allow that closer to 2023 when the next World Cup is. They'll, Chris Silverwood and Owen Morgan, if he's still captain, will want players playing 50 overs. So I wouldn't imagine the Royal London Cup will be at the same time as this year. I think Tuff has hit the nail on the head. For young county players this year, it gives people an opportunity. It gives guys an opportunity to play. I look back at last year at the Bob Willis Trophy, when it was only 5 games. There was no overseas. Not many Colpacks came over. So counties are almost forced to give their young guys a chance. And it's amazing how well they did. I can look at Essex. Last year. It kind of got Paul Water up and running as a batsman for Essex. He batted a 5. He probably wouldn't have played, but he's coming and did pretty well. Aaron Beard got a run of 4 or 5 games, and he's taken a huge amount from it. So I think this year it will be. Yes, it won't be the trophy everyone wants to win, but when you're in it, you still want to win the trophy. So. It'd just be slightly different names and faces, and I reckon you might unearth a few kind of young talents which are given a go a year ahead of what they might have done, and some might fly.
Well, this is the first Tuffers and Vaughan since England lost the Test series against New Zealand, since the World Test Championship final as well. And we enjoyed that, Tuffers, didn't we? The kind of the last couple of days particularly were really good down at Southampton, and New Zealand made what a fantastic effort, wasn't it, to beat India?
Yes, no, it was really great. I think the best team won. I think the most all-round side won. Beautifully captained by Kane Williamson. He really does seem to have, his head screwed on, and everyone facing the right way, and have really sort of bought into him and are following him. Great lot of seam bowlers. Perhaps they're light of a really sort of like high-class spinner. but bat well, just a really good, solid, well-drilled, catch well, all fight for each other kind of side. So I was delighted for the Kiwis to come out on top there.
And what did you think, Tuffers, of India? Because, of course, England, we're looking ahead now. It's just over a month ahead till the Test series against India. What did you make of them?
Well, I don't think they batted very well. I mean, Cookie might be able to fill us in a little bit better, but I think that that's what lost them that Test match down at Southampton. I think the seamers bowled really well. You know what the spinners can do, and they were starting to come into the match, but it was rain affected, wasn't it? Crikey, we were down there for 2 days watching it rain and what have you. But I still think that there are a few issues there with the batting. I know that New Zealand, and the conditions were, it was overcast for a majority of the game, and it was a bit damp, and it was swinging and seaming a little bit. But I think they batted poorly. I think they'll be kicking themselves. They didn't get, anyone who did get a start then didn't go on. You always felt that there was a nick or a full shot just round the corner. So I think England will take a little bit of heart from that batting display.
What did you think, Alistair? Because I think we expect India to come out all guns blazing, don't we, really, and be as brilliant as they were in that Test series against Australia. And was it down to lack of preparation, do you think? Because they had intra-squad games beforehand, and we were talking about this yesterday actually. And will they have any meaningful cricket before the Test series starts, or will it be more intra-squad games?
Well, I don't actually know the answer to that question. I think it is just inter-squad games, but I think without blowing smoke up, blowing my own trumpet, I did say that New Zealand were going to win that game purely down to the fact that they were match hardened. Those two Test matches against England was such perfect preparation. And inter-squad games, as good intention as you go out for those 3 or 4 days, it hasn't the same intensity. It's not a first class game, it's not a Test match. So things are always, even maybe after the first hour might be really competitive, then every little bit just grows less and less and less. So I think India were hard done by that way. I do believe they probably got a bit confident in picking that side, 3 days out before, playing 2 spinners where they knew it was going to rain for pretty much the forecast saying it was going to rain for a lot of that game. So it was going to be a lot of seam bowling bowled. Even though, their spinners are world class, I think they're a little bit, they got a little bit ahead of themselves there. Like India, a great side. England always fancy their chances if that ball moves. If the conditions like they played those Test matches in, if they were wet August, with moisture around, England will fancy bowling at that Indian side. Yes, they're a world-class batting unit, in general, but their big thing is their big weakness is if the ball does move, if it nips. You always fancy your chances against them, even if they get, as Tuffer said, 40, 50, 60. You always feel in the game. If it's a flat wicket where it doesn't move, that's what their bread and butter are. And they will go big and go big a lot of the time. So it does depend on the wickets England play on, and that's kind of a bit of a catch-22 for England, because if they want to beat India, you play on green seamers and you make them 3-day games, but does that really prepare you for Australia, in their next Test matches? And
we've got to think of India as a huge test as well. As we said, they were massive. The number one test nation in the world before this World Test Championship final. And I don't know what you thought, Phil, of the kind of fragility of the England batting that we saw in those 2 tests against New Zealand.
Shambles. We were talking there about Joe Root sort of in the 50-over game being a situation player. Well, I didn't see any of that against the New Zealand side in any of those 2 Test matches. I still think there's a huge worry about the top 3. I think Rory Burns is probably pretty much penned in, but I think there's 2 or 3 spots there lurking around. Ollie Pope, shorter runs. Obviously, the likes of James Bracey came in first, and second Test match he was going to be nervous. You can do that, but I just think that batting order against that Indian bowling lineup will struggle, and they need to do something about it and quick, because we could get blown away.
Right, you're sitting down with them, Alistair. You're going to sit down with Rory Burns, Dom Sibley, Dan Lawrence. I mean, hopefully you're talking to Dan Lawrence anyway. But what are you going to say to them? Zach Crawley as well. Who got double 100 last year. What's going on in their heads, do you think?
Well, I think you nailed it. What is going on in their heads? I mean, shambles it's a word I probably I probably wouldn't use. I would use fragile is a word, and the word I kept using at the end of that series was when the pressure came on, this batting unit don't respond very well to it. They often collapse. Say when the game's right on the money, when third innings of a game, or when it becomes tough. Now, if you're sitting down with them, you'd have to have. This is a cliche, but you have to have that honest conversation with them where they bare their souls to you almost. What were they feeling like? What was going through their head? Now, are they battling demons with their technique? Are they battling demons with the enormity of playing for Test cricket for England? Are they worried about their place? Because the techniques of these guys, we're just a little phase where they do have quirky techniques, a couple of them, but those quirky techniques have allowed, Rory Burns has got 3 Test hundreds, John Sibley's got 2 Test hundreds, Crawley's got that magnificent, he actually hasn't got a quirky technique, but a magnificent double hundred. Ollie Pope's got a nice technique, even though I'm not quite sure how he's lined up quite right at the moment. So it's one of those that what are they battling with, and then you try and go and help them with. I think a lot of it is mental and the adjustment from playing Test cricket and first class cricket. I without speaking out of turn, in one sense, looking at Ollie Pope, a guy who's averaging mid-50s in first class cricket, every time he gets in, he goes and gets a really big 100, where it's totally the opposite in Test cricket. He gets in all the time. Gets, I don't know what his stats were, but I think he gets between 10 and 30, something like 12 out of his last 13 innings. It hasn't gone past 34, whatever it is. That is a purely mental thing. Now, to get past that and to learn from it, you have to be honest. You have to find someone to talk to about that issue and try and deal with that issue.
And maybe they need to talk to you.
Well, look, there are some outstanding cricket coaches in that dressing room. That's just like you got Marcus Trescothick. There's ever a person who's to talk about the mental side of batting, what he went through with his career. Like, what a person! He obviously had his very high profile issues with the mental side of the game and his, I suppose, depression in one sense, but what a person to go and talk to about it. Like, there's people out there, look, of course I might not be the right answer for some people, or the right person to come and talk to. They might not find what they're looking for, but there's enough help out there for those guys. But ultimately, you talk about the coaches or whatever, the players have to, when they cross the line, they're on their own, and they've got to front up to the situation. They've got to examine themselves and sort it out themselves. They've got all the help in the world in that England bubble, in that England setup, and they've got their coaches back at home, probably the guys they've been working with. But ultimately, it's down to the individual.
I mean, we've got a few guys to come back into that lineup. I mean, it was a very inexperienced lineup. I mean, the talent is there, but I mean, I just sort of cast my mind back, Cookie, to those 2 Test matches when they should have been sort of leaving the ball outside off stump. They were going after it, and then in the other innings when they should have been going after it and trying to chase down a bit of a lead or whatever, they started blocking it. It was just like every decision they went for seemed to be the wrong one.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Actually, I think what I was impressed with the New Zealand batting lineup there, that they played the situation brilliantly. So I think that little moment at Edgbaston where England changed the ball.
That's right.
And the clouds came in, the floodlights came on, and it swung all around the corner. And Stuart Broad bowled magnificently, actually. He beat the bat loads of times, and he could have got 4 or 5 wickets. And Ross Taylor, the greatest starter ever, because actually, ironically, the only wicket we got was when Conway hit a leg stump half volley down deep back to square legs throw. Everywhere else, like, you expect it to be nick off, but Ross Taylor, a terrible starter, he found a way of getting through that period, didn't he? He was ugly, but he was like almost played for his stumps, didn't he? You knew England were trying to get him at LBW, and he was like almost dead batting anything straight, almost held his bat there, thinking he was going to miss it. And when he was in the channel, just still play for the straight one. And he really reined in. It's like, you could just see it in his eyes to get through this period, and it got easier. And then he got I think he got 80 off about 130, 40 balls because he accelerated on. And I think that was the difference that we noticed in that Test matches. When it was tough, New Zealand said, right, we'll hunker down, we'll get through this hour and a half. Where England, you wouldn't know whether England are on top at the moment or 30 for 3. They kind of play the same way every single time, and you can't afford to do that. And Test match cricket, you have to adapt, and you just hope the guys learnt from that experience and spoke about it.
They had a perfect opportunity there, and I hope that those England guys and those young England guys did see and take notes and watch everything, even their preparation, because New Zealand were first class. They really were in everything they did, especially their young players. They came out and just batted him. Like Nichols and these guys, they just looked. As you said, the fragility in the England side, you think that you can lose 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 quick wickets at any time during the day. Yeah. But with that New Zealand side, you really had to graft for your wicket, really had to earn it. But there were no soft dismissals to be had there. And, they were just a very sort of like, they look well drilled and locked in. And I think that's what this England team have got to be. We're a little bit... We got a few iffy techniques which then bowlers will seize upon, and that's what bowlers do. They sniff out little sort of quirks in your technique and go after you like that. And also, perhaps as Cookie was saying, just that little bit of fragility in the mind as well.
We've got to also remember, I was looking at how many games these guys have played, and like Sibley 20, Burns 25, Crawley 14, Pope 19. So 4 out of the top 5, take Joe Root out of it, have played less than 25 games. Now, in a really seasoned Test side, you only want one player really under 20 games, don't you? You want everyone else, 50, 60 games. Now these guys will be learning on that. There's the side which we say went to Australia with in 2010-11. Myself, Strauss, Trott at 3, Bell at 4, KP at 4, Bell at 5, Collingwood 6. When we got to Australia there, we'd all played 50, 60 Test matches. We'd all gone through what Sibley, Burns, Crawley, Pope are going through at this precise moment in time. What in terms of, we'd all done that journey. I hate the word, but we've done that journey. We've experienced the highs of Test cricket hundreds, the lows like they would experience last week beating against New Zealand, and you do come out the other side hopefully a better player. You either come a better player or you get washed away and you never play a game for England. That's kind of where these guys are, and this is why it's such a great challenge. It'll be interesting to see how they cope with India, because I think they will be pretty much the same batting line-up, obviously with Stokes and Buttler coming back in. But Sibley, Burns, Crawley, Root, Pope, I reckon will probably be in that top 6 come that first Test match.
And I was going to say as well that if you are setting homework for these players between now and the start of the India series at Trent Bridge, beginning of August, so say just over a month to go, I wonder whether you sit them down and you get them to watch the way that Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor batted to get New Zealand home against India, because I've just got my notes out then, because they were 44 for 2. They lost both their openers quite quickly, New Zealand, didn't they, in that second innings in quite a simple run chase, 139 off 53 overs, and you just watched Williamson and Taylor just defend, calm things down, and then just knock those runs off. I was so impressed by that, Tuffers. I don't know about you.
No, absolutely. And the same really with Kohli in that first innings. I think he scored 1-4 or something, didn't he? You know what I mean? And that's what I liked about that Test Championship. There was a sort of frisson of sort of right at each other's throats, wasn't it? That everything had just gone up a little bit of a level. And I think that's what these young England players have got to they've got to realise that this is what this is all about. You know what I mean? It's not going out there in their first little sort of wide half volley swinging away. You have a waft at and nick it, and then you just walk off and put your bat down and say, oh well, off we go again. You know what I mean? You've got to learn from your mistakes, and that's not what I'm seeing at the moment from some of these England batsmen. They keep making the same mistake over and over again, and whether that be sort of technically or the game situation. You know, they're too easy to outthink as a bowler, and they're going to be coming up against a world-class seam attack in India as well. I
think you just said about Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor, the way they played. That's where England have got to get to, isn't it? That is the experience of guys who've played 80 to 100 Test matches. These guys, that is what that experience buys you, isn't it? Recognising the situation, and probably when Williams and Taylor were in their 20 and 25th Test matches, they probably wouldn't have handled that situation anywhere near as well as they did then. So that is what experience is, those kind of situations. And you hope these guys are, Sibley, Burns, Crawley, Pope, they're all putting what's happened to them so far in their Test career in the memory bank, in that kind of, in their brain, in that learning thing, and they're processing everything to become better at it. And then hopefully we'll be talking about these guys, in 2 or 3 years' times when they played 60, 70 Test matches with 10 hundreds and they play one of those great innings like those along the way, that they have learnt from these kind of periods.
Well, that's the Test series, which is a way ahead, as we've said. Beginning of August, that gets underway at Trent Bridge. So we've got now 2 more ODIs against Sri Lanka to come, and then there's a series of white balls. So I think 3 T20s, 3 ODIs against Pakistan as well. What are you looking forward to most, Tuffers, over the next few weeks?
Oh, well, I think Pakistan will come and that they'll fancy their chances of winning. I think they've got a very strong white ball squad coming over here. Babar Azam and the likes of these guys. They are a very, very well organised and got most bases covered. Rizwan, the wicket-keeper, fabulous as well. So they'll give England a much stiffer test. But looking forward to that. That'll be a good series between Pakistan and England.
And what about you, Alistair? In good form for the resumption of the county championship?
Hey.
Well, I hope so. It's a must-win game for Essex a week on Sunday it starts. So I'm actually looking forward to it. It's been a good break, for me. Like, we played a lot of cricket, those 9 games in 9 weeks. I'm not sure that should happen again. I think it's not great for intensity. Not good for the players. It certainly wasn't good for me. So looking forward to that game. If results go away, we might be able to sneak into the First Division. Then it's all to play for in September.
Didn't you used to play a county championship game with a Sunday league game in the middle, Tuffers, or was that slightly before your time?
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily at the same ground either, so that was a lot of travelling about, but that was in the dim and distant past. Do you need any throwdowns, Cookie? I can come down and give you some, get your eye in.
I'd love to, Tuffers. I don't know if Derby got any left arm spinners, have they?
And Tuffers, before we go, actually just a quick word, because you've been at the big BBC launch of the 100 today as well, so that's happening on the 21st of July. So did that kind of fill you with enthusiasm? Looking forward to whole new competition. We just don't know how it's going to be, do we? I suppose.
No, so how exciting is that? A very exciting sort of time at the moment. As you say, a completely new format, completely new rules. It's very exciting. The best players from overseas, the matchups between the England boys is going to be great. I can't wait to see Mark Wood bowling at Ben Stokes and Jofra Archer trying to bounce Joe Root and all these kind of things. So there's lots of great matchups along the way, as well as a lot of sort of homegrown talent as well on show. So it's going to be great fun. The women are playing as well on the same day. The music's all going to be there. It's going to be fabulous. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting.